start by bringing you up to date with the latest coronavirus developments around the world. A memorial has been held for victims in Spain. The country has recorded 812 deaths in the past 24 hours and now has more registered cases than China. Japan has reported a surge in cases amid fears that a lack of testing and social distancing has allowed the virus to spread undetected. Tokyo has recorded its highest number of new daily cases with 68. In the United States, President Trump has extended restrictions until the end of April. He previously said he hoped America could reopen for business at Easter. Australia has unveiled an $80 billion package to support the economy and retain jobs. The number of cases there has risen by a quarter over the past 2 days. And one of Europe's biggest airlines, EasyJet, is grounding its entire fleet amid a huge global drop in the demand for flights. So Spain has now become the third country to overtake China in the number of coronavirus cases. The country has held a minute's silence to remember the victims. And our correspondent Guy Hedgecoe has the latest from Madrid.
Spain now has more infections than China, and we have the latest death toll, daily death toll, 812 over the last 24 hours. And today we've had that minute's silence, flags flying at half-mast. The country is obviously in lockdown, but we've got new restrictions reinforcing that lockdown as of today, preventing non-essential workers from travelling to their place of work. I should point out that the government is insisting that despite the distressing nature of the figures that we're reading and we're hearing, it does believe that the country is seeing the flattening of that upward curve of the virus here in Spain.
Which everyone seems to be talking about, the flattening of that curve. But Guy, tell us about the healthcare system. No doubt it's really struggling.
Yes, absolutely. Really, since the crisis began, the healthcare system has been under tremendous pressure, particularly in those areas of the country that have seen bigger outbreaks. Here in Madrid, up in Catalonia, up in the Basque Country, in the north as well. Those areas have all seen a tremendous amount of pressure on their local healthcare systems. One of the big problems has been a lack of medical equipment, face masks, respirators. Yesterday, a plane flew in from the Czech Republic, which had donated 10,000 medical suits to Spain. That reflects the desperation really here in Spain for medical equipment, and it's the intensive care units right now which are under tremendous pressure. So that is a huge concern.
And no doubt, like all major cities across the globe, Madrid there is a ghost town as well.
Yes, absolutely. Today more than ever. I mean, it's a Monday, but you really wouldn't know it. There is some traffic circulating, but a few buses, a few taxis, some other cars. But the streets are virtually deserted. It's an unrecognisable city at the moment. People do seem to be complying with the terms of this lockdown that's now been in place for over 2 weeks under a state of emergency. The police have been patrolling the city, enforcing that lockdown very tightly. Certainly here in Madrid, it's pretty much a deserted city, and I think that's pretty much the same across the rest of the country as well.
That was the BBC's Guy Hedgecoe there reporting from Madrid. Well, let's go to the United States now. President Trump has said restrictions will be in place across the United States until at least the end of April. Now, he'd previously said he hoped to relax the measures at Easter. The White House's medical advisor, Dr. Anthony Fauci, has warned the virus could kill up to 200,000 Americans. Paul Adams reports.
As this global pandemic spreads, waves of gratitude are quick to follow. Other cities have already thanked their health workers, but this is New York, a deafening chorus of appreciation echoing down Manhattan's misty canyons. But there's disquiet too. Nurses and doctors say they don't have enough protective equipment, told to wear masks not just for one patient, but for up to 5 days.
It's putting all of us in danger because we're reusing masks that should never be reused. We're running out of so many things, other protective equipment.
With America's city streets increasingly deserted, the prospects of a swift return to normality are fading. Officials are now warning of as many as 200,000 American fatalities.
If we could hold that down, as we're saying, to 100,000. It's a horrible number. Maybe even less, but to 100,000. So we have between 100 and 200,000. We all together have done a very good job.
But with the virus and the lockdown comes mounting economic hardship. New York's busy food banks now inundated with newcomers, people deprived in the blink of an eye of the ability to put food on their tables. In New Orleans, before dawn, emergency room doctor Tom Krajewski prepares for another long shift in a nearby hospital. He says he's not used to seeing so many people not recovering.
Instead, they have gotten worse while they've been in the hospital, and in fact, many of them have passed away already in a way that's it's not normal.
A vast hospital ship is now moored off Los Angeles, helping to relieve the pressure on California. The Mercy has 1,000 beds for non-coronavirus patients. America's most populous state is now bracing for difficult days. Paul Adams, BBC News.
Now, there's been a surge in new cases of coronavirus in Japan amid fears that a lack of widespread testing has allowed the virus to spread undetected. 68 new cases have been reported in Tokyo. Japan has not instituted many of the virus protection measures seen in other countries. Here's Rupert Wingfield-Hayes.
So these new measures the Japanese government has brought in are really, I think, in response to a significant pickup in the number of confirmed coronavirus infections in Japan over the last week or so. And we've seen a particular rise, particularly large rise here in Tokyo over the last few days. So on Saturday and Sunday, we saw more than 60 new cases on both days. That's much higher than we've seen in previous weeks. And really, Japan looked like it had this epidemic well under control for most of the last month. The figures have been going up, but they've been going up very, very slowly. And then really suddenly, the middle of last week, it started to look like there was an acceleration. And on Saturday evening, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe came out and said that he was concerned that Tokyo might be on the verge of a very major outbreak. What's really strange here, living here in Tokyo, is that even now, life is going on pretty much as normal. Over the weekend, parks, the city's parks were all closed down. People were told to stay at home. Department stores were closed. And so the streets were much, much quieter. But come Monday morning, today, we have seen people go back to work. It's still very busy. The city's notoriously crowded subway network is just as crowded as normal. So it is still very strange. And a lot of people are questioning why it is that the government of Prime Minister Shinzo Abe and the Tokyo city government has not taken stronger measures.
That was our correspondent Rupert Wingfield-Hayes reporting there from Tokyo. Now let's look at some of the other developments in the coronavirus outbreak this hour. EasyJet is grounding its entire fleet because of the coronavirus pandemic. The aviation industry is dealing with stringent global travel restrictions and no clear deadline for when they might be lifted. Partly as a result of the lack of demand from airlines, oil prices have fallen to their lowest level in almost 20 years. The benchmark Brent crude has fallen to just above $23 a barrel. Other prices have dropped below $20. There is an upside, however. Air pollution levels appear to have dropped in European cities since movement restrictions were introduced. Data from the European Environment Agency shows Madrid's levels more than halved after non-essential travel was banned 2 weeks ago. Now to Australia, and that country has announced that in a bid to reduce the spread of coronavirus, the government is now limiting social gatherings to just 2 people, down from 10. They have also unveiled a $80 billion financial package to help the economy. The new measures include a JobKeeper subsidy to try and help businesses retain at least 6 million jobs over the next 6 months of uncertainty. The new package is the latest in a series of huge announcements over the past week that will see the government invest heavily to support the unemployed and small businesses during the crisis. I got the latest from our correspondent Phil Mercer. Have a listen.
It seems that each day brings new historical, history-making announcements by the government. What we've seen today, this $80 billion package to help keep about 6 million Australian workers in their jobs, is something that Australia has never, ever seen. This is an attempt by the Australian government essentially to put the economy into hibernation. So when the coronavirus crisis is finally over, the hope is that the workforce can spring back into action. Now, in about 45 minutes' time here in Eastern Australia, radical measures will be brought in to try to force Australians to adhere to very strict social distancing regulations. As of midnight here in Australia, the number of people allowed to gather outside will be limited to just 2 people. So the Chief Medical Officer here in Australia is saying that these are radical measures trying to flatten the curve here in Australia, a country with more than 4,000 known cases of COVID-19 and 18 deaths.
Phil, perhaps those measures were needed. I mean, who could forget those images on Bondi Beach with crowds of people gathered there, despite these concerns about coronavirus?
I think, simply speaking, many people in this country up until the last few days probably weren't getting the message. This is a relatively isolated country. Australia is using its geography to essentially establish itself as a fortress. All foreign nationals are banned from this country. But I think the authorities have been dismayed. They have been aghast at those images of people, not just on Bondi Beach, but other public places as well. And that is why these very strict social gathering regulations come into force. So Australia is doing all it can to try to flatten the curve. And these new regulations mean essentially that 2's a crowd and 3 is a crime.
Phil Mercer reporting there from Sydney.